Rebonjour. Okay, so hopefully you've gone through the avoir exercises and expressions, done the Quizlets, kind of reviewed what avoir looks like. Okay, if you didn't do that first. Otherwise, this is going to be more difficult than it should be. Okay, so the second part of this chapter is focused on the passé composé. All right, and I had already gone over all of these in the last video in the intro. But basically, we're going to be able to know when to use the passé composé, what it looks like, and then make some of your own sentences. Okay, so the first step in doing this is I want you to watch, if you haven't already, if you're following the module in order, you've already done this. I want you to watch my video, Mon Voyage à Paris, and do the accompanying quiz slash comprehension questions. That will kind of ease you into the past tense without being like just so full on grammar. So do that first. If you haven't done that, go and do it and then come back to this. It'll make a lot more sense. I promise. Okay. So, voilà un petit bande dessinée, OK, de, de représenter la différence entre le présent, maintenant, now, et le passé, après, OK, after. Alors, la femme dit à son mari, qu'est-ce que tu vas faire? Qu'est-ce que tu vas faire? OK? Ça, c'est la construction qu'on a appris, qu'on a discuté dans la leçon 14, le futur proche. Qu'est-ce que tu vas faire? What are you going to do? Et le mari dit, il répond, je vais travailler dans le jardin. Je vais travailler dans le jardin. Alors, il parle de ce qu'il va faire dans le futur. OK. 1 heure a passé. OK. So, après. Sa femme, elle est étonnée. Elle dit, mais qu'est-ce que tu as fait? Qu'est-ce que tu as fait? What did you do? Eh bien, j'ai travaillé dans le jardin. Okay, he's like, hey, I worked in the garden. Il a fait une petite sculpture. Il a sculpté son profil dans le buisson. Oh là là, ok, quel égoïste. Mais bon, ok, ça va? Alors, le grand concept est que le passé composé, euh, c'est quelque chose qui est terminé, quelque chose bien complète, bien terminé dans le passé. C'est vraiment quelque chose qui est arrivé, quelque chose qui peut être marqué sur un calendrier. Okay, so voilà mon exemple. Okay, so here's my example. So this is a timeline. Okay, ça parle du gouvernement, des types de gouvernement en France. Okay, nous sommes dans la 5e République maintenant. Mais bon, OK, ça parle de l'histoire de la France, comment France a été gouvernée. Bon, anything that is put on a timeline that you can mark on a timeline as being done and dusted and over is the passé composé. Okay, so when you're talking about something that happened, something that's completed, something that you could definitely say this is over, that's the passé composé, and that's when it's used in French. Okay, so just kind of keep that mental image of a timeline in your head. Okay, of like, see how on this timeline there's different dates, when the Constitution, happened. Okay, if you were talking about, when, Marie Antoinette was a été guillotinée. Okay, that would be on here as well. Okay, so something that's over, past, done, timeline, passé composé. Okay, this is what it looks like. All right, so I have grouped several different verbs on this one slide, but we are just going to focus on, for right now, ER verbs. Okay, verbs from that first group, just to kind of dip our toe into le passé composé. Alors, le formule pour le passé composé est sujet plus verbe auxiliaire, okay? Dans notre cas, c'est avoir, okay? So in this case, we're going to be working with avoir. There are there are 17 verbs plus a few other cases that take être as the auxiliary verb. But I will go into that detail later. So just know that the majority of verbs are with avoir. So that's why we're starting with that. And we're going to start with ER verbs, just like we started with ER verbs in French 1, because they're the most common verb in French. They're like 90% of all verbs. And it's actually pretty easy to get the form down. Okay. So we've got subject plus auxiliary verb plus past participle. Okay. Elle a mangé. She ate. She ate. Okay. So that's the formula. The formula for the negative, okay, is really the same thing. It's just that you're putting ne pas in there. As always, ne pas makes a negative. And notice where the ne pas is. Did you find where it is? It is around the conjugated verb, around the auxiliary verb, okay? And that's always where you're going to find the negative. Right? I mean, even in the present tense, right? You put it around the verb that is conjugated. Okay. Same thing in the passé composé. Got to look for patterns. All right. So, just a few notes as we kind of get into the passé composé. We're going to baby step our way into this. So, one thing is the subject and the auxiliary verb must agree. Okay. J'ai mangé un gâteau. All right. So, je ai, j'ai. That's why we're going over the conjugation of avoir, because the subject and the auxiliary verb are what's conjugated. The past participle just stays the same. All right. You would never say le garçon a mangé un gâteau. No, 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 no. So this is why it's important that you review the conjugation of avoir. All right. Secondly, as the name implies, passé composé, it is composed of two parts. So you've got that auxiliary verb, the one that matches the subject, mostly, as I said, avoir, and the past participle. That's the true verb, the one that indicates the action. Okay, that's if it's manger or trouver or travailler or jouer, okay, that's what's describing the action. The verb that is going to match with the subject is the auxiliary or the helper verb. And then finally, ne pas always goes around the conjugated verb. Okay. So, je n'ai pas mangé. I didn't eat. Okay. You would never have je ne mangez pas. No, 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 no. Okay. So, the ne pas always goes around the conjugated verb. So, again, it's very important that you review how to conjugate avoir in order to make the passé composé correct. Okay. So if you can't do this, like boom, 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 this needs to get to be muscle memory. So do that Quizlet a few times, grab a scratch piece of paper, try to, see how well you do, do one side, fold it, whatever, just memorize this. Okay. I am pretty certain most of you can memorize the singular side. If you haven't already, and we'll just need to familiarize ourselves with the plural side, with nous, vous, elle, et il. Okay. All right. Then just a note on the past participle, how to form that. So for ER verbs, all you're doing is you're dropping the ER and you're adding an E with an accent aigu. Okay. So manger goes to manger. Yes, the pronunciation is the same. Okay. So that's why this is nice and forgiving. But for the spelling, you do have to change it. Chanter, drop the ER. Chanter, accent aigu. Trouver, laisse tomber le ER. Ajoute accent aigu. Trouver. Okay. So pronunciation the same, just got to change the spelling. We will go over how to handle regular IR verbs and regular RE verbs in the next chapter, but you can see from this slide that it does follow the same kind of pattern. All right. Again, we're just focusing on ER verbs right now, just to get used to the pattern. All right. So hopefully by the end of this unit, you will be able to identify and use fixed expressions with avoir, Describe when to use the passé composé, identify the form of the passé composé, and use the passé composé to make some sentences of your own. And to help you practice that, I have put this written activity into the Canvas module as well. People like to do similar things, but they do them differently. Explain this by completing the sentences below with the appropriate passé composé forms of the verbs in parentheses. So for number 1, all of these answers are going to use the verb visiter. All of them are going to be in the passé composé, which means that you need to know how to conjugate avoir. So appris tu. Okay, so what is avoir with the to form? To a, okay, as. And then how do you make the past participle of visiter? And this is what I just went over, okay? So you're going to have appris to as, visiter. So you're going to drop the ER and then add the E with the accent, visiter. If I were you, I would put that past participle up here at the beginning, at the top. Just write visiter, visite, and then with the accent. Do it for all of these, okay? Do that right off the bat. Then when you're doing these exercises, you're just looking at the subject. Tu, okay, how do I conjugate avoir for the to form? As, tu a. Then you're going to look at nous. Okay, how do I conjugate avoir for nous? You're going to look at your verb chart. You're going to review that Quizlet. Nous avons, okay, and then you're going to put the right form of visiter with the accent. All right, so you're going to do that for all of these. They're all going to be in that passé composé form to practice. Okay, and this is in Canvas as well. All right, bon courage.